All right, yesterday we talked about if I gave you 2 points, you find the distance. How do you think you did on that homework last night? Let me hook this mic up. All right, so what we're going to do now, if you remember yesterday, I said that the next three things, they're going to give you 2 points, and they're going to ask you to find three different things. The first thing they're asking you to find is the distance between those 2 points. The second thing is the what? The midpoint between those 2 points. And then the third thing is the what? What did I say? Slope. It's the slope. I already said midpoint. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do the midpoint today, and then on Monday we'll do the slope. I could probably squeeze those in the same day, but I'm not going to today. So let's talk about what a midpoint is. All right, here's how I usually start. So let's say you're on a road. All right. So here's your house. I'm a great artist. There's your house right there. There's your front door. All right. And then over here is your friend's house. It's a ranch house. Boom, boom. All right, there you go. All right, so there's two houses, okay? So right here, and you're along the same road, and let's say it's a nice straight road, perfectly straight. I got to make a lot of assumptions about this. Let's say you are at the 3-mile marker right here, okay? And your friend is at the 10-mile marker. And you guys want to meet at McDonald's. There's M for McDonald's, right? And McDonald's is exactly halfway, all right? It's exactly halfway. So what mile marker is McDonald's at? Actually, let's do this. Let's change, just to make this easier. Let's make it a little easier. Let's say that's at the 11-mile marker, okay? All right? So what I want to figure out is what mile marker is McDonald's at. That's where you want to meet. It's exactly halfway. What do you think, Caleb? Can't hear you. At 7? How'd you get 7? Okay, they're 4 miles apart. Very good. But how far are the houses apart? 8. Right, the houses are 8 miles apart. Agreed? Everybody see that? Yeah. Because we just talked about how to find the distance. How do you find the distance between two houses? How do you find the distance between the two houses? Subtract them. Okay, so 11 minus 3. I'm going to write this all down. Let's everybody watch. So the distance between two houses is 8. So it's 8 miles. That's the distance. Sorry to bother your conversation there. No. I didn't ask. I just want you to be quiet. So the distance between two houses is 8 miles. Does that mean you're at the 8-mile marker? No, it doesn't, okay? If it's halfway, how far is it, distance, how far is it between this house and this house? It's 4 because it's halfway, right? So it's 4 between here and here. And then how far is it between this guy's house and the McDonald's? It's also 4 because it's halfway. It's going to be the same distance, okay? But I want to find the mile marker, okay? At what mile marker is it? Well, if you started at 3 and you went 4 this way, what do? You add them up, right? So that would be what? 7. And you could also do it the other way too, couldn't you? You could go from 11, but you're going the opposite direction, so you wouldn't add them. What would you do? You subtract 4 from the 11, all right? And you still get what? 7. So where are we? We're at the 7-mile marker, okay? Now, there's a lot easier way to do this than what we just did, all right? But that's an explanation of kind of what you have to think about. But let's think of a real easy way to figure out the midpoint between two other points. Tristan. Very good. Okay, add them up. So if I take the 3 and the 11, all right, if I add them up and then do what to it? Divide by 2. Divide by 2 because it's halfway, right? So you add them up, you divide by 2, what do you get? 14 over 2, which is what? 7. And that's a lot easier, isn't it? Just taking the 2 endpoints, you add them together, you divide by 2, and then you got your midpoint. You with me? So now let's transfer that over to the Cartesian plane. you remember what the Cartesian plane is? Yeah, or sometimes they call it the coordinate, or what do they call it? The rectangular coordinate system. All right, either one. Matthew, I'm talking. Shh. So we call it the rectangular coordinate system, or sometimes we call it the Cartesian coordinate system. Doesn't matter. All right, so it's the x and y axis thing. So what if we're kind of gonna do a little bit of what we did yesterday with the distance, but this time we're not finding the distance. We're going to find the what? The midpoint. Okay, so here's my line segment, right here to right here. Now, I'm not really sure what that point is exactly. I'm not sure what that point is exactly, but what I want to do is I want to find out where is the point that's exactly halfway. Okay, so where do you think it would be? Stop me. I'm going to go up the hill. Stop me when I'm in the middle of that yellow line. About right there? Okay, that looks pretty close. All right, a little bit further. I'll tell you what I can do. I can click on this. I think we're right at it. Yep, because it gives you a dot right in the middle of that little line segment. And it's pretty much right there. So that was a pretty good guess. All right, so that's our midpoint. But I got to figure out what is the coordinate of that midpoint. All right, we're not going to put in just regular numbers just yet. Let's do that x and y thing like we did yesterday. Remember that x1, y1? All right, so let's call this, it doesn't matter which one you call point 1, point 2. We'll just do this one. All right, so this one, what are we going to call it? x1, y1. So if we call that point 1, we'll call this point 2. So what's this going to be up here? x2 and y2. All right, everybody with me? So what we're going to do, let's do different colors again. What I'm going to do is make a little right triangle again. I'm going to go from there to there. And then I'm going to go, let's do a different color. Oops, I got to click off of this first before I change colors. We'll go green. And then we'll go from there to there. That's close enough. Doesn't hit, but it's supposed to. All right, now what we're going to do is this. In order to find this midpoint right there, let's change back into white. All right, in order to find this midpoint right here, what do you think you're going to do to the blue one? Find the what? Yeah, but we're finding what? We're finding midpoint, right? So if I find the what of the blue, because if I go halfway across the blue and then go what? Halfway across the blue, then up what? Halfway of the what? The green one, okay? So if I go half of the blue one and half the green one, guess where I'm going to land? Boom, I'm going to land right there. That was an ugly looking X. Let's try that again, okay? I'm going to land right there, okay? That's where the midpoint's located. Does that make sense? All right, so let's figure out where this midpoint is. Well, before we do that, let's find this point right here. Remember we did that yesterday? So let's do the same exact thing. Let's go, turn it back into yellow. So what is this point right here? Well, how far over did we go? x2, right, because that's where the green is. See, the green is at x2. So if I go over here, I'm going x2. And if I go down, how far am I going down? y1. That's that distance from here to here, right? From there to there is y1. So I'm going to go y1. Now, the stuff we're doing right now, you don't have to do on a homework or on a test or anything like that. All right, I'm just showing you where the midpoint formula, we're going to have a midpoint formula. Just like we had a distance formula. We're going to have a midpoint formula. I'm just showing you where it comes from. All right. Again, like I said yesterday, I could just sit here, show you the midpoint formula, show you how to use it, call it a day, and we're done. Okay. But I think it's important. I think you guys can handle seeing where this comes from. All right. So what we want to do is find the midpoint of the blue. That would probably be about right in there. Okay. Now, how do I find the midpoint of the blue one? What do? I take this X point right here, and I take this X point right here, and what do I do with those 2 points? Well, what do I do first before I divide by 2? I add them up and then divide by 2. All right, so what's this point right here then? X what? 1 plus x2. No, this is on the x direction, right? This is on the x direction. So the blue is all x. So this is the x1. This is the x2. What do I do to those? Add them up and divide by 2. So that's where we are right here. Okay? Then I want to find half of the green. Half of the green would probably be right in there somewhere. Let's find the point for the midpoint of the green one. Now we're going up and down this time. So what letters are we using? Using the y's, right? So I'm going to take, doesn't matter what order you add them, because when I add two numbers, does it matter what order you add them in? No. So I'm just going to go 1. Is that all right? y1, what? Plus y2 over what? 2. So that's this midpoint. So guess what? That's going to be the x part of that point. And this, it's going to freehand it, but that would be the what? It'd be the y point of this point. So what is my midpoint then? This is what I'm trying to find, this point right here. What is that point? How far over do we go to get to here? We go over the same as we want to get to the midpoint of the blue one, right? So it's going to be x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, right? Because it's a point, right? This is a point. So I got an x part and I got a y part. So what's the y part? I'm over here on the x. I got to go up a little bit. How far up do I go? I go this far right here, right? y1 plus y2 over 2. That right there is how you find the midpoint. Let's write it real nice and neat now. Okay? So let's do it in whites. There we go. So the midpoint, I'll just put MP. Is that all right? Midpoint is equal to. Now, it's not just a number. What is it? It's a midpoint. So a point's always written as a what? Yeah. As a coordinate, as an what? A blank blank, 2 words. Ordered pair. Very good. Okay, it's an ordered pair. So I have to write it as an ordered pair. So how do I find the x part of the midpoint? I just add up the x's, right? The x1 plus x2, and do what to it? Divided by 2. But I also have a y point to this midpoint, don't I? Got an x and a y. So what do I, and I put a comma. And what's the y point? The y coordinate? y1 plus y2, that's right. And that's over 2. And that right there is our midpoint. It should be a little bit easier to understand this whole mess right here. It should be a little bit easier to understand since we did that yesterday. Would you agree? Yeah. All right, and then now you can kind of see where it comes from. So again, this must be memorized. All right, you need to know it because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 points. We're going to do one here in a second. I'm going to give you 2 points, and you have to find the midpoint of those 2 points. It's really not that hard if you know what you're supposed to be doing. So here we go. The question says, this is example 2 in the book. Example 1 was the one we did yesterday with the distance, okay? This is our midpoint example. It says, find the coordinates of the midpoint of -2, 3. Oops, there we go again. I keep clicking that button. -2, 3, and, let's try this again, and 1, 5. 1, 5. There it is. Doesn't that look like the problems you did last night? Yeah. Except, what do you find in this time? The midpoint. What did you find yesterday? The distance. You found the distance, okay? So this time we're finding the midpoint. It could be confusing. Do you see how it could be confusing? Because it looks very similar to what you did yesterday, but you're finding 2 completely different things. Yesterday you found how long the line was. Today we're finding out where is the point that's halfway in between. They're 2 completely different things, but it kind of looks like it's the same. So what would you do for every single problem? What should you do? What do you think I would tell you to do? No, before you do, write the formula down. Exactly right, okay? Every single time, at least on your homeworks anyway, I would write down the formula. Why would you do that when I already got it up here? I could just look up here. So you remember it. That's right. So you memorize it. That's going to help you memorize it. So I'd write down the formula, and now I can plug everything in. All right, x1 plus y2, or sorry, x1 plus x2. Which ones are our x's here? -2 and 1, very good. So that's my x1, and this is my x2. So you just add them up, right? So it's -2 plus 1. And then what do you do with those? Divided by 2. All right, let's do the y's. So what are my y's? This is one of the y's, and this is the other y. Doesn't matter what order you add them up. Because I could have gone -2 plus 1, or I could go what? 1 plus -2, or just 1 minus 2, right? Everybody see that? All right, so it doesn't matter. Let's add the y's up. What do we get? 3 plus 5. And that's over what? 2. We are not going to write it as a decimal. Okay, we rarely in here write things as decimals. All right? We're going to write it as a fraction if it comes out to a fraction. We're going to keep it as a fraction. All right? We're not going to turn it into a decimal. So don't get your handy-dandy calculator out and punch it in and see what the decimal is. It's not what we're doing. We're going to keep them as fractions. Now, there are situations, absolutely there are situations, where you're going to turn things into decimals at some point. But not right now. We're not going to. All right? So what do we get? -2 plus 1 is -1 over 2. And then what's this? That's 8 over 2, which is 4. And that is the midpoint. That's where the midpoint of that is. So let's just show you. You don't have to do this, but I'm just showing you, just so you have a general idea. You're not just looking at all these equations. I want to show you what you're actually finding here. Because sometimes you see all these numbers, you see all the x1s and y1s and all that kind of stuff floating all over the place. You're like, I really don't even know, maybe I can get the answer, but maybe you don't know like what you're actually doing. So let me show you what you're actually doing to this problem. All right, let's put this in red, kind of stands out. All right, look at the points that they give you. What do they give you? -2, 3. So let's plot -2, 3. -2, 1, 2, 3. There's -2, 3. All right, what's the other one they give you? 1, 5. So over 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there. And what are we going to do with those? Yeah, make a line, just a line segment. Okay, we're not gonna make it keep going. Okay, because can you find the midpoint of a line? No. In fact, it seems like if it was a line, every single point on that line could be a midpoint, couldn't it? Because it's just as far in one direction as it is the other direction, because it's infinity in both directions, no matter where you are on the number line. Agreed? But a line segment is different. Okay, so here's my line segment. So where do you think the midpoint is to this line segment? Probably somewhere in here. Would you agree? Probably about right there. But is that good to just say probably right there? No, but that's what you're finding. Let's see if we were pretty close. What did we come up with? -1/2, +4. So look at that yellow dot right there. How did you get to that dot? You start at the origin, you go over how much? What do you think? Halfway, right? So that looks pretty accurate, doesn't it? So -1/2, and how far up do we go? 1, 2, 3, 4. Sure enough. So does that make sense that this is the midpoint between those 2 points right there? Absolutely. All right. So that's what we're doing. Okay, we're finding out where the midpoint of that line segment is. Again, I know I'm harping on this, but I just want you to remember it. What'd you do yesterday to this red line? Let's pretend this was yesterday's assignment. What would you do to that red line? Find out the what? The distance, how long that line is, that line segment. I keep saying line, but I should say line segment, okay? So how long that line segment is. You see, it's two completely different problems. Agreed? Yeah. You guys yesterday kept on saying rise over run. Have we done rise over run yet? No. What do you think we're going to use that for? To find the what? Find the slope. To find the slope of the line. But we're not going to do that today. We will do that on Monday. All right? Are we good? I think one example is good enough, right? Yeah. Sometimes they come out to all whole numbers. Sometimes not. It's no big deal. But if it does come out to a fraction, just keep it a fraction. What if this? What if it was a different problem and it came out to like 4 over 8? Would you leave it 4 over 8? No, you'd always reduce it. What would that be? It's 1 over 2, 1/2. Okay. So if it does come out to a fraction, make sure you always reduce it, but do not change it into a what? A decimal. Now look, in real life, yeah, people change that kind of stuff into decimals. Like if you're going to measure something, like carpenters and people like that, they would use decimals, absolutely. But right now, just for high school math, we're going to stick with fractions right now, okay? Any questions on this? All right, so your assignment then is what, 7 to 12? And let's see what page. 132. Well, we're going to go over the homework here in a second. So page 132, and it's section, what are we calling it, 3-4B? Well, the homework itself is B, right? Because I gave you 1, didn't I? Yeah. Right? The distance stuff would be A. It's C on the lesson. You understand where my letters are coming from? It's C because this is the third time I've taught this part of the lesson, but this is the second homework assignment. So we'll call it 3-4B. All right? So the one that we're going to go over here in a minute, that's 3-4A. And then we're got to do slopes, so we're going to have a what? 3-4C. All right. Everybody good?